I became a professional clown about a year or so ago, and since then I've had a great time making people laugh. I've made balloon animals, done magic tricks, and hit myself in the face with a slapstick more times than I can count. That being said, some things haunt you in this profession. More than creepy comments or bad stereotypes, the one thing that I cannot shake that still makes it hard for me to operate is the fear of clowns. Coulrophobia, or the intense fear and aversion of clowns, is one of the oldest fears that I can think of. It is paired alongside things like the fear of snakes and spiders, yet one of these things is not like the other. The clown is a very, very interesting figure, mainly because, as opposed to a natural force like heights or animals that can kill you, the clown is listed among these basic fears, even though it's an invention of our own making. Several people are unnerved by clowns for one reason or another, whether it's just not liking the red noses and face paint to having a full-on panic attack like my grandmother's old family friend. We're gonna talk about that in a little bit. Fear of clowns is a very wide-reaching and very, very complex phobia. That being said, what specifically gives us our fear of clowns? Now, in my short time operating as a professional clown, I haven't actually come across many, many instances of people being downright terrified of me, and I'm not the scariest clown that you can find, so that would make sense. Most of the time, people are scared by their perception of clowns as they were 50, even 100 years ago, which is big one-piece, billowy suits with big buttons, and not to mention the white face with a big red nose and angular features painted on. These tend to be what we think of when we think of clowns. Now, these features can cause fear for any number of reasons, but I think one of the more pertinent ones is simply because of how exaggerated they are. Many faces, especially traditional clown faces, are made to have big exaggerated eyes, elongated wide mouths, and upraised abnormally big eyebrows. This isn't for any sinister reason in its inception, it's simply so that you can see a clown's face that they want you to see from a very far distance, kind of like how a mask works. The effect of this tends to get us shoved somewhere inside of the uncanny valley. Now, the uncanny valley is a phenomenon in which things that look human but aren't human cause us distress to a point where it follows a grid. Essentially, it starts here, and something can look more human, but not exactly, kind of like a toy robot, and that goes up, up, up on the valley scale. Except when you start adding more and more human features to it, we start falling deep into this pit of uneasiness. We start seeing this a lot more with CGI animation, and we don't really come out of that valley until we get back to human beings. Androids and modern AI tends to be a big source of the uncanny valley. Another example of this is Madame Tussauds wax figures, which look very, very realistic, but ultimately leave us with a sense of unease simply because they look so lifelike but don't move. And if they were to move, we would absolutely run away. And this is also why people have an issue with AI, which is essentially when you bring a wax figurine to life, and that is oh, wow, I don't like that at all. Now, the Uncanny Valley houses any number of disturbing things that people have issues with to varying degrees. For instance, some of you love the Polar Express movie, and others of you think it's horrifying, especially that one scene with the puppets. Puppets also tend to fall into the Uncanny Valley with dolls unless they are the Muppets. And so our emotional response changes the deeper we go into the valley, and it can be a big issue when we're making the descent and on the way we see something that looks a little like me. Now, as I stated before, I am not the scariest clown that there is, but imagine a bald, pale head with a wide red mouth, maybe even fake blue tears, but definitely elongated pupils painted over real eyes. And we start to see where a fear of the uncanny can come from. We see this trend on TikTok too. It's a very, very terrifying thing. While clowns actually aren't that deep into the uncanny valley, they've made themselves well known, despite maybe not intentionally meaning to be scary. There are other explanations about the fear of clowns though, and sometimes it's not always about the presentation of the clown, but the behavior of the clown. According to a poll by the Scientific American, some of the fear that people share with clowns is simply because they have these perpetually happy faces that may or may not have harmful intent hidden behind them. This kind of image is pervasive throughout the clown world. People are terrified of this because there is a severe loss of innocence when you find out people who make you laugh aren't good people. And it becomes very, very, very hard. People that you're supposed to trust can make you very, very uneasy and paranoid about what they may do. Even more so for a clown, because our target demographic tends to be people who are a lot younger. Most of these depictions of scary clowns are where images of unease come from, but scary clown's makeup is meant to be scary. It's when the makeup is supposed to be just basic, aesthetically distance-based makeup that people really start to get nervous around clowns, especially professional clowns. And although scary clowns do have the predominant market when it comes to clown items, memorabilia, and pop culture nowadays, our actual perception and distrust of certain angular features and abnormally wide mouths has precedence in real life with things like the makeup of John Wayne Gacy, who I hate for so many reasons. I'm gonna cut right here just to make sure I can have this little rant time. I hate John Wayne Gacy. I know, it's a controversial opinion. It's almost like he was an awful person. But the thing I hate most about him, besides all the other awful stuff, because I hate that before I hate this, it's just like a cherry on the awful sundae that is his entire existence, is that you cannot be in this profession without somebody bringing him up. He is an awful example of what a clown is meant to be. I mean, look at this picture of him. He looks like a demented jack-o'-lantern. He has triangular eyes and a big, wide, pointy mouth. He was not even trying. He was a clown because he liked the attention. Except I don't even want to call him a clown. He was a monster is what he was. And, sorry. We're going to stop and move on because I'm too mad. White makeup with red and blue markings may also tend to remind people of injured bodies, corpses, anything along those lines, because, you know, when you lose blood, you get pale and bruises can turn blue. So these are all physical reasons why people might be scared of clowns. And while these all stem from a clown's physical appearance, the clown's behavior tends to also cause issues. According to a compiled study from the National Library of Medicine, one of the biggest issues people have with clowns is how unpredictable they are. That is simply the nature of a clown. A clown relies on unpredictability. You never know what a clown is going to do next, and that's because they are creatures invented in comedy. They're born in comedy. You see, a clown operates on this rule of subverting expectations. All comedy does that. Youth Pastor Ryan on TikTok actually talked about this a long while back, but comedy stems from subverting expectations in a positive way. You are leading up a punchline, so whether or not it's something as simple as, "Haven't I seen you somewhere before? I'm not sure I'm seeing you now. It must have been something I ate," to something as simple as getting slapped in the face. Comedy is all about subverting expectations. Here's the thing though, the same principle that exists for comedy also exists for horror. In horror, we have a setup, but we subvert expectations in a negative way. And because it's actually such an alarmingly thin line between horror and comedy, especially because it's based on our own reactions, the clown becomes this entity that walks it like a tightrope. And depending on which way it leans, the clown can either be your best friend or your worst nightmare. And now that we're discussing this tightrope and how easy it is to lean one direction or another, I feel like it's important to discuss the fulcrum on which the clown sits and why it is such a scary figure. The main reason that we find clowns scary is us. You see, in that same article by the National Library of Medicine, there is another reason listed for the fear of clowns, and it's simply because a family member might be scared of clowns and they pass it on to you. If your mother is scared of clowns, there's a good chance you might be scared of clowns. And the other thing, in my opinion, that tends to drive the fear of clowns is our own portrayal of them in media. We've been talking about it the entire video, but Stephen King's It and other horror franchises like The Terrifier or American Horror Story all do their part in cementing this image of scary clowns in our modern minds. And this is not their fault. Some people love creepy clowns, and I have friends that operate as creepy clowns. There's actually an entire market for that, and there's nothing wrong if you enjoy them. But that being said, they're meant to be scary. And regular clowns like me aren't meant to be scary. So our image gets meshed together because of the tightrope I mentioned earlier. It's a very, very fragile and very, very weird line to walk. Further still, we actually do have negative impact with professional clowns that can cause coulrophobia. It can be as simple as seeing a clown pop a balloon animal, or as severe as, maybe me accidentally punching a person in the face when you were just trying to pull a paper coil out of your mouth. Let's move on. And sometimes it's not even people that are intending to clown around that cause these issues. It's not actual clowns causing these fears and phobias or these negative interactions. There is an entire generation that still remembers the clown scare of 2016. It was a real, actual event where people had videos and were telling stories about clowns coming out of the woodworks with axes and hammers trying to attack cars and chase people down. Now, in reality, most of those videos were faked and were for pranks, and it was simply a case of mass hysteria, but the damage was done. It was not a good time to be a professional clown in 2016. And many people who work as clowns now have learned how to deal with this phobia, similar to how I've learned to deal with it. A lot of times people are less scared of clowns if they don't have the white face paint, or if they don't have a lot of face paint at all. Most of the time, a red nose is fine, and I've seen so many professional clowns completely abandon traditional makeup in response to the fear that it causes. I mean, I'm one of them. The only exaggerated features on my face are my eyebrows and my mustache, and this is based off of early clowns from the 1920s and 30s. People that you wouldn't even think of as clowns also molded themselves to fit the era that they were in. Charlie Chaplin was a clown. Lucille Ball, clown. The Marx Brothers. Harpo Marx, actually legitimately a clown. Abbott and Costello, Laurel and Hardy. These characters are all clowns to their own extent. And when it comes to figuring out how to navigate this modern world as a professional clown, you have to be willing and aware of how your audience will react to you. You're not a clown by what makeup you wear. It's simply by how you interact with the audience and what you do to make them laugh. Now, will traditional makeup make a comeback? I have no idea. Only time will tell about that. But in the meantime, I am completely content with what I am wearing. Now, just to clarify, this is only my personal experience with clowning. Other professional clowns might have completely different stories, and people with phobias of clowns might have completely different rationales than the ones I've listed as to why they might be scared of us. But overall, when we're talking about the fear of clowns, we have to be aware of triggers. Sometimes the red nose is triggering enough. I've had people look, one time when I was in St. Augustine, all I was wearing, I didn't even have the fake mustache on or the eyebrows. It was just a red nose. I had my actual mustache curled up, and a woman would not look me in the face because the red nose was enough to make her terrified and walk in the opposite direction of me. Her husband was literally saying, "Honey, he's not even wearing makeup. It's just the nose." And she was going, "I don't care. I can't stand it. I need to get out of here." And she walked off down the street. It's a very, very sad thing. And if the lady who saw that ever sees this, which I highly doubt you will, just know that I am terribly sorry. I really am. I did not want to scare you like that. But these are real things that happen in the industry, and sometimes out of the industry. And so we're going to close on a funny, really kind of creepy story from my grandmother. When I told my grandmother that I was working as a clown and I was succeeding a lot in my freelance work, she was really surprised, because her perception of clowns and people's reception of them was that it would not be popular at all, that I would be making pennies on the dollar for most of the work I'd be doing, but it turned out to be the opposite. And when I asked why she thought people would be so scared of me, even with my makeup, because she knew what I looked like, she told me a story about a family friend of hers. We're going to call him Jerry. Jerry was terrified of clowns. Beyond a shadow of a doubt, terrified of clowns. There was no solid origin that anyone could pinpoint. His mother didn't know anything, his wife couldn't figure out anything, he never opened up about anything, and there was no history of interacting with clowns in his past, but whenever he would see a clown, either in image or otherwise, he would get very emotionally distressed. Now, he never really had to worry about this because, like my grandmother back in the early days, she used to work at a desk job, and Jerry was, simple enough guy. That's not exactly where you experience clowns. Until he went out of town for a business trip with his wife, and he needed a place to stay. My grandmother had another friend named Roy, and Roy had his own house that he lived in with his wife somewhere in the city that Jerry was taking a business trip to. And to avoid a hotel cost, just through proxy, they exchanged information, and Jerry was going to stay with Roy and his wife while they were on this trip Except when they made it to the house and Roy opened the door, Jerry fell down and started to scream. Roy was obsessed with clowns, and he had everything clown-related you could think of in his house. He had figurines, toasters, posters, coasters, all the things you can imagine that could have circus or clown-themed things on them, blankets, throw pillows, all of it. Clowns. In fact, apparently there was even a basement where there was even more clown and circus memorabilia that he just had as a part of his massive collection of clowns. No one told Jerry or even thought to tell Jerry because Jerry didn't really make his phobia known until after this incident. When Roy cracked that door open that day and Jerry got a small glimpse in, chaos slipped right through the door and started to beat him over the head with an oversized shoe. He fell back on the lawn screaming, and if my grandmother told the story correctly, he had to have an ambulance called for him because he was having a hard time breathing from the panic attack the sight of this circus memorabilia was causing him. So overall, not a great experience, and when the wife and paramedics tried to weed out of him what the source of this fear was, because they were just figurines, mind you. Scary as the thought of that much memorabilia can be, it was just figurines. His response, I kid you not, was, they can get out here, they can get out here, they can get out here. What? So, yeah, that is terrifying. I don't know what happened to this guy. They never figured out anything. There was never a birthday clown in his past. There was never a circus trip. He was just that terrified of clowns as an innate, emotional, natural response. And I think about that about every week. So, yeah. Roy, by the way, not a clown. Just liked them that much. And obviously, guys, I like clowns. A basement full of clown stuff? I don't want to meet this man. I'm sure he's lovely, but I don't want to meet him. I know it's a lot coming from me, but no. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all of you. It's been a crazy, crazy ride. The clowning has even gotten a little bit of attention on TikTok lately, so that's kind of why I wanted to make this video. But I didn't actually write the script for this intending for it to be about the fear of clowns. I have another video idea reviewing my favorite short story, The God of Dark Laughter by Michael Chabon, and this kind of blossomed out of it, and I felt like I wanted to talk about this first before I made a whole essay on that short story. So, if you like Lovecraftian creatures and clown death cults, be sure to stick around because I'm probably going to be talking about that in the near future. That's been the video, and thank you very, very much for watching.
Bye-bye.